Okay, this should be pretty short. I'm just finishing up talking about chapter 2 of Psychological Types. This is where Jung is going through how Schiller initially thought of the functions, though not in those specific terms. I think there's really only two things I want to talk about. The first one is that I don't think Jung has actually given the definition so far as he's been going through just chapter 1, chapter 2. I know eventually he does give the definition of introversion as orientation towards the subjective factor. So that hasn't come up yet as I'm reading through this. But it is a problematic concept for a lot of reasons. One of the reasons I brought up is like the difference between the subject and the object is never clear. It's like what phenomena are objective and what phenomena are subjective. Like it's all within the domain of consciousness. But the other reason is like leaving that problem alone, leaving alone the problem of objective versus subjective. Even the subjective isn't clear. It's not clear what it is. Like I know there's these ideas of the collective unconscious as the subjective factor, and I think the collective unconscious is a really weird it's a really weird idea. Like I think like Jonathan Pageau has this idea of just that these symbolic categories like are just the way that we have access to reality, and they are invisible. Like they're this invisible structure that precedes all our perceptions, and so we don't see them directly, but it informs everything that we do. So okay, with Pageau, you would have like a bridge has a certain meaning psychologically inherent because of your experience of a bridge. Like a bridge is where you go over water, and water is a place of chaos. Like it's not related to any cultural memory of like, oh, my ancestor fell down a well in my culture, and like therefore water is related to death in my culture. It's just like no. This is just like an objective quality of these things, and so things necessarily have these meanings. So okay, I prefer that way of talking about symbolic reality. Like it seems like Jung wants to use the idea of the collective unconscious as something which structures reality, right? Like we think through these archetypes. But so he hasn't gotten to that yet. The reason I'm bringing this up, the problem of subjectivity, is that most of the functions don't necessarily touch upon the unconscious, it seems. Like with sensing, I mean, it's easiest with thinking for me to imagine like, okay, like what is the actual subjective nature of introverted thinking? It's like, okay, the introverted thinking type has this like impression of the object on him, and he uses that to say like, okay, this is what's really real, and I'm going to create this class, this like form that is what is really real. But it doesn't touch any of the rest of his kind of complex psychology. So it's like, it's really, what I'm trying to say is that like, even the way Jung talks about subjectivity seems more related to the way in which the person is dealing with particular contents. Like it's actually not related to the person as much as it is related to the way in which they're dealing with the contents. And I say this because in this chapter, Jung is talking about how you can detach from the contents, and that produces a kind of introversion into this, like, you know, mystical space of no content. And this is related to how I want to talk about introversion and extroversion, is that it doesn't always need to involve all the mechanisms of the self. We can talk about introversion more in how it relates to contents, and that's what I want to do. So like most of the time, the way Jung is talking about the functions, it's less to do with, you know, the whole complex of subjectivity, and more to do with how I mean, I really think with how the contents move into a kind of unity. I was thinking about extroverted sensation versus introverted sensation today, and I was like, okay, like how do I talk about, if we have an apple, right? And we place the apple in front of the extroverted sensing type, and place the apple in front of the introverted sensing type. Okay, what's the relationship between unity and multiplicity, as I want to talk about it here? I think the extroverted sensing type like wants to expand the amount of perception of qualia that's it has access to, and you do that by kind of exposing more of your sense organs to the thing. So, you know, extroverted sensing types are famously like very active, and so the idea is like, okay, the extroverted sensing type grabs the apple, and now there's new qualities about the apple that it's paying attention to that it wasn't before, whereas the introverted sensing type is stitching together this apple with the, you know, the multiple apples, the multiple fruits, the multiple foods that it's experienced in its life, and is kind of comparing and drawing it into a kind of unity, all of which doesn't involve sort of the deep like transpersonal stuff that Jung wants to talk about when he talks about how the unconscious works. And this is already kind of like how we talk about the functions. You'll notice like people really don't talk about subjectivity when they talk about introverted thinking, and a lot of the times they don't talk about it when they talk about introverted intuition either. Like just kind of you know, your average hobbyist, your average typology hobbyist doesn't talk about those things, unless they're, you know, getting really into you as well. So yeah, that was a bit of a ramble. I'm still trying to figure what all that means. The second thing is just, Jung has this comment, and I don't think he means this. I don't think he means this in a way that he's like, oh yeah, remember this is how I think about the functions. I think he's doing this for a particular purpose, but he says that we have the functions because there are parts of reality that exist, and we need to be able to respond to those parts of reality, which is this very, like, you know, socionics kind of move, and he says like, this is just how this is just like how we have ears because there are sound waves, and we have eyes because there are, you know, there's electromagnetism. And this is something that's troubling me, and I don't understand the implications of it fully, because it seems to me that we could get the experience of seeing color is not in the light waves, and the experience of hearing is not in movements in the air. These are like qualia which are not reducible to the waves. So why do we not have the experience of seeing with sound? Rather, why do we not have the experience of seeing when, you know, air hits us in the way that it would produce sound? It seems like kind of an arbitrary thing. Like, okay, this qualia emerges from these parts, but why not the other way around? Yeah, and so there seems to be I take it that the functions correspond like that. Like, it's not that there's like parts of reality that correspond, and then, you know, we match up we produce an organ to respond to those things. It's more like, this is how your consciousness is inherently written. So it's like intuition creates concepts. Like, concepts don't exist without intuition. I mean, that's a bad example, but yeah, no. I mean, that's perfectly fine. Like, feelings don't exist without feeling. Not the existence of feelings isn't prior to the organ. If that makes sense. I don't know how committed I am to that, but that's my intuition, and I don't know. I don't know what that does, or if that's true, but I'm working through that. But that's what these videos are for. So yeah.